You've been gone a long time, Jesse. And that's a lot of souls you owe me.
Or you could just say, it's been great to see you, Jesse. I'm glad I could help your friend. Spellbroke can be on your merry way.
Why would I ever say that?
What's up, guys? Ryan and Gage here, and we're breaking down another episode of Preacher. This is episode 2, season 3, and it's called Sons of Bitches.
Yep, but before we get started, be sure to subscribe to GameSpot Universe so you can get all of these breakdowns. Right now on the channel, we have the comic book history of Preacher available right now.
So Sons of Bitches spends an awful lot of time as Jesse tries to get his soul back. Remember, he doesn't have 1% of his soul, and he needs that in order to get out of the current predicament that he's in with Grandma, Jody, and T.C. Now, how will he do that? He needs some help from the Grail. But before we get to that part, we got a little Angelville flashback that showed a young Jesse helping out Grandma, Jody, and T.C. and basically the family business that used to run back then.
So can you make her go away? Not like kill her or anything, just erase her mind or make her a lesbian or something.
Madame Langelle is a world-renowned spiritist, diviner, and mistress of the pyramids. She's got spells to fix everything, but she's expensive.
So this teacher is a horrible person, horrible human being, and doesn't pay up his debts to Miss Marie Langelle, and then his soul gets taken. Now the big thing here was the machine that I guess they used in order to take portions of soul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was kind of similar to the Happy Soul Go-Go company
from last season.
And we see that it takes a little bit of him, but like we don't quite see the repercussions just yet, not until later in the episode.
Right, and also I guess we're supposed to believe that she is staying youthful by taking portions of these souls. Jesse was working with her to get more clients in, and thus she can live longer, stay more youthful, and be stronger.
Yeah, Jody had made a very quick line about that, like it's what she does to stay young, and whether that actually means she's consuming the souls to stay young and that's how she keeps living on, or whether that was just a little throwaway line. We'll kind of find out as the season goes on.
Leave him. It's about time the boy learned.
How do you think she stays so young?
So the bottom line is, Grandma wants to bring Angelville back to the good old days. She wants Jesse back and kind of bring it back to when it was happening.
Nowadays, I guess the business is not so great.
No.
Marie Boyd's is kind of booming.
She's kind of been cringing on her territory, and they definitely got a little rivalry going on.
Right. Now let's talk about the little dilemma between Jesse, Tulip, and Cassidy. Obviously, Jesse is like, Cassidy, you can go. Who knows what's gonna happen when Jody, T.C., and Grandma find out that he's a vampire?
Yeah, I mean, if she really is sucking out souls to try and stay young, and Cassidy, as a vampire, is immortal, who knows if she might want to tap into that power to really utilize him to stay forever young.
Yeah, we don't really know how they're going to react once they find out that Cassidy, if and when they find out that Cassidy is a vampire. On the flip side, Cassidy's like, I'm not leaving unless Tulip is with me.
Yeah, Jesse tried to kick him out of there, told him he's no longer needed, he can hit the road, but Cassidy will not leave without Tulip.
There was a fun little moment too in this section when Jesse and Tulip are talking to each other and they drop the Until the End of Time, which of course is a popular run in the comic books, and they've dropped that numerous times throughout this show. How do you feel about the relationship between Jesse and Tulip? Do you feel like it's back to 100%?
I mean, I'd want to believe it's back to 100%, but I feel like they're intentionally having Cassidy be that little wedge in between them.
Yeah.
And we see glimpses of when Tulip also has affection for Cassidy. She even did say, I love you to Cassidy in this episode.
I did not smell.
Like an animal been laying out there on the road for a couple of days, except worse. I swear to God.
I love you, Cass.
Let's not forget that Cassidy talked to Grandma about that spell. I have a feeling that that's definitely going to come into play.
Oh yeah, they would not mention the love potion and what she did to her former lover for no reason. That's definitely going to play. Whether he used it or not is a different story, but that's coming into play.
Next up, we get Herr Starr. He's back in the show, which we love. He's shooting up a Krishna temple to the tune of the Youngbloods Get Together, which is in complete contrast of what's going on screen. That's obviously about peace and brotherhood, and he's just killing fools left and right with the Grail.
Yeah, it was actually really interesting to see. Like, it was a really cool action sequence and just
Yeah.
showed how menacing he can be, which is a nice contrast to last season when it felt like he took a little more of a back seat.
Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting to see if he's going to be going after more of these religious sects and temples and forcing them to bow down to their religion, to the Humperdoo, if you will.
Will you take Humperdoo as your one true leader and join us?
Eat shit, you fascist pig.
Profanity in a house of worship.
Let's just take 1 minute here just to talk about Pip Torrens as Herr Starr. They did a phenomenal job casting him. It's like perfectly comic book.
Oh yeah, he looks exactly like he does in the comics, like almost to a point. Like even in that battle at the end when he got the scar, like he looks just like him.
Yeah.
And he's just so menacing and evil, yet at the same time somehow can relate to Jesse and approachable. Like he is so evil. It's just beautiful.
But also his deadpan sense of humor is just spot on. And Pip Torrens just plays it perfectly.
Oh, phenomenal.
So he gets a phone call in between all of this from Jesse, and he's gonna head down to Angelville and help Jesse out because Jesse finally agrees to becoming the Messiah, which when it happened, I didn't really believe in the first place.
No, I mean, from the beginning, it already kind of sounded like a harebrained scheme. Like it just it wouldn't make sense. Like, how would Herr Starr, why would the Grail, why would they believe Jesse would suddenly have a change of faith?
Exactly.
Especially after what Featherstone did to Tulip.
There's no reason for them to believe each other. There's no loyalty between them. Jesse literally just wants the 1% of his soul back so he can use Genesis. And obviously Herr Starr wants Jesse to be the Messiah, but that's not gonna happen. So this whole plan was really not really thought out that well. And we find out later that Herr Starr was prepared for that.
Eat your
It was a genetically modified placebo. It won't work.
So at least Herr Starr did that right. He didn't give him his soul immediately off the top. Jesse tried to use it against him immediately, and it was a placebo. So it was kind of like, we don't know if it's actually like a real part, like a synthetic soul, or if it was just like, it works for a few minutes, or if it was a mental thing where Jesse thought he had his soul, so that's why it worked.
I mean, they made it sound like it was a placebo, one that would work just in his mind, but the voice, like the voice of Genesis. Last season we saw when it didn't work, when they had his soul, you could hear like the scratchiness in the voice and like something was off about Genesis.
Right.
But I find it interesting that this time when he was using it, there was none of that. Like whether that was just Jesse convinced it was working or just to fool the audience, it makes me think that that genetically altered soul that they created actually allowed Jesse to control the powers just briefly.
Right.
Long enough for Herr Starr to fool Jesse into thinking he had his powers back.
Right, so Herr Starr immediately finds out that Jesse would have used the power against him, and Jesse falls for it. Jesse's kind of dumb, by the way. I'm like shocked by how dumb Jesse is at points in this show.
Yeah, like I'm honestly surprised his scheme got as far as it even did, because this was really, really ill-conceived.
Yeah.
Now that you've got that predictable spasm of juvenilia out of your system, let's talk.
Let's take a minute here to talk about Genesis, the voice of God, and how it kind of creates a problem with the storytelling. In the comic books, it was much different than losing his soul and then the power not working. I believe in the comics, when he got to Angelville, God made it so that his power was useless against Grandma, T.C., and Jody.
Right.
But it's a challenging thing to do. I mean, every superhero story has it, right? It's like Superman with his kryptonite. You want to basically create a little conflict and vulnerability in your hero.
Right. I mean, in the show, like if Jesse were to have his powers back, there is really no one that can rival him.
Right.
Like the Saint of Killers could, but then they found a way to actually stop him by giving him part of the soul. But that's out of the equation now too.
Right.
So how do you make him vulnerable? You just simply take away his powers, and while it feels kind of like a cop-out to do in the show, since the whole show is based around that, I get why they had to do it.
Which version do you prefer, the comic book version or the TV show?
I think I preferred the comic book version, with God actually putting in that barrier for him to not be able to use it on his family until later.
Right.
I think it actually presented where he still had his powers and still could be useful in other ways, but it prevented him from having an easy out of a tough situation.
All right, let's talk about our new favorite duo, TC and Cassidy.
What a pairing.
Yeah, they're strange to say the least. They find a common interest in drugs. What do you think about them?
I mean, it was a fun little dynamic, but what they were discussing really got, well, up, to be quite honest.
Right. super dark, some like fantasy about Lucy Liu and T.C. basically raping her, it sounded
Yeah,
like.
while she was screaming but didn't hate him.
Yeah.
Like that was just wrong.
Really out there. But the only funny part of this whole thing, to bring some levity to it, was, the question about, is T.C. the worst one out of everyone here? And no, that's not the case. There's actually worse people. But it made me think about the comic book versions compared to the TV adaptation.
Right.
And the comic book version, they were much horrible, more frightening, more menacing group of people in Angelville.
Yeah, they're not someone you'd want to be buddy-buddy with. They were despicable human beings who you almost felt like they needed to die to get away from.
Yeah.
But in the show, like, we see Cassidy befriending TC, and it's almost like, as messed up and despicable as he is, they could maybe have a friendship, and I don't know.
Yeah, it's really weird. It's like there's too many moments where it's like too chummy between these characters, between Jesse and Jody. I mean, obviously they got into a fight, but
Right.
I remember the books being a lot more, a lot of conflict between all these parties, and like no light moments at all.
Right, it was all dark.
Yeah.
A very, very dark interpretation, and this almost made it a little more lighthearted, maybe for television viewers, but it was a very different view of those characters.
It's hard to fight the chill these days. It'd be best if the boards don't know you're home yet.
All right, so TC makes the pop culture reference of Lucy Liu. Then it's Cassidy's turn later on in the show, and he makes another reference to the Big Lebowski. Obviously, all the way back in season 1, we know that Cassidy does not like the Big Lebowski.
No, he does not.
He does, however, enjoy Miller's Crossing, which is cool. I'm totally on Tulip's side, though. Big Lebowski is a good movie. I enjoyed it.
Cassidy's crazy.
And maybe even yet another nod to the Coen brothers, the meat grinder in the backyard near the swamp. It felt a little bit like the wood chipper, and I have a feeling that some humans might be headed inside that thing.
Yeah, more likely than not.
The thing about it is, take on any kind of meat you like. I had a raccoon jump out half ground one time. Angry coon, half ground legs, his innards all out. Now that's a scream you don't forget.
Are we forgetting that Cassidy should not be in the sun? Like, I know he's wearing that little umbrella hat, but his hands were completely exposed, reaching out like with nothing covering him for those guns. And even when he gets shot and he falls back, his neck is completely exposed to the sun. Nothing, not even a sign of him burning up.
Yeah, it's funny. I think that like the show spent a lot of time worrying about that in the first season, obviously in the beginning. But now it's kind of got to a point where they're just like, screw it. Like, let's just like let him go outside. Like, it's so hard to create a story that with characters that can't do that, and he's just stuck inside all day, or just like wait until nighttime. So I think they're just like, screw it, like let's just move on.
Yeah, they probably just said he's rocking that SPF 5000 or something to give him a reason to be out.
Exactly. Another big moment from this episode, we see the shot of Christina Longel's tombstone with Grandma and Jesse spending some time in the cemetery there. Do we think that she's actually dead though? In the comic books, remember, it went back and forth.
Yeah, in the comics, they made it seem like she was dead to everyone in Angelville.
Yeah.
Like, Jody shot her by the swamp, but she survived, but she couldn't remember who she was, and even went by the name Jody because that was the only thing she remembered and kept saying. But in the show, the way they showed the tombstone, the way they're playing it off, I feel like they're trying to take a different approach in the show, and I think she might actually be dead.
Yeah, it seemed pretty, like, some finality to it. It seemed like it was really, like, sad, like maybe he witnessed her death or something like that. You know, it was more than just seemingly dead in the comic books.
Right.
So a little different direction, but I think it was effective. And then we get to the point where the episode earns its title. We find out exactly what God said to Tulip.
I'm counting on you to get those sons of bitches.
I mean, we kind of suspected as much. Like, it kind of was hinted that he was saying, get those sons of bitches, but we got official confirmation on it.
Right.
And this episode made it seem like she was going after the Grail. It made it seem like those were the sons of bitches she had to go shoot down.
So she immediately attacks them.
Right. I mean, granted, she thought Jesse had her soul back, but it was a big mistake.
Yeah, huge mistake. I think ultimately it's gonna be Grandma, Jody, and TC to wipe them off the earth and get back at them.
Right.
The other thing it could be is just get those sons of bitches, anyone who's trying to track them down.
Yeah.
Stop Jesse. Stop anyone else who's trying to track him down. He's like, I'm done with heaven. I'm done with y'all. I want to do my own thing.
Right. I mean, I'm still convinced it's going to be Grandma and her company.
Yeah.
Just because in the comics, they had a little play off that where, like we talked about earlier, he put up a restriction on them initially, but then lifted it so that they could go after and kill them all.
Right. A couple other fun little references we noticed. Like you said this earlier, when Herr Starr gets shot in the head, it's literally a spot-on reenactment from what we saw in the comics.
Yeah, even the way the blood dripped down and everything, it was like shot for shot in that panel.
Another reference is obviously when Herr Starr is talking to Jesse about Allfather. Who's Allfather? The Allfather that he's talking about is Allfather Dr. Anik.
I think we're saying that right.
Yeah, I think so. And he plays a big role in the comic books, and we're going to get him this year. We've seen promotional images and trailers that we're going to get him this year. He's this big, cruel leader of the Grail.
Right.
And he is bulimic. He's like 1,000 pounds, and he needs like a plane and a helicopter in order to get around.
Yeah.
And obviously, Herr Starr is trying to form a coup and take over his position in the Grail.
Right, whereas the Allfather is all about Team Humperdew and keeping the purity of the Christ line.
Right.
In the comics, we find out that Jesse and the Allfather actually do have a connection. The Allfather, his aunt, is none other than Jesse's Grandma Marie.
Right, but we don't want to get too far into what happens between them because that's super spoiler territory.
Right.
But those of you who have read the books, then you know exactly where this is headed, possibly.
Right.
So by the end of the episode, we learned that Jesse's the blood pact with Grandma. It sucks for him. She basically can control him. She twists it, and he's on the ground in pain.
Yeah, it's like a crazy form of voodoo.
Right. So the only way that he can kind of break that is if he has Genesis and he can, talk her out of it and command her to stop this. We also learned that in the tombs down below Angelville, the same teacher from the beginning of the episode is still down there.
Help me.
Okay. I'm sorry.
We don't exactly know how long he's been down there unfed or untouched, because it looked like Jesse was the first one to go down there after a long time.
It definitely did.
But I'm guessing they're probably feeding him maybe that consomme that we saw earlier.
Yum. Also, I guess that she's kind of like feeding off of the souls of all these people, so maybe she's slowly pulling a little bit of their souls out and they end up like just mindless zombies down below in the tombs years and decades later. Also, what are they doing down there with them?
Yeah, the question is like, who else is down there? Like, how many souls are actually trapped underneath that Grandma Marie's been feeding off of?
Yes, Jesse is no help to the man because Grandma ultimately can do whatever she wants to Jesse right now. So he's in a tight bind right now. Also, that line was uttered by his mom, fittingly, in the first episode. So that's it for this episode. If there's anything that we missed at all, please be sure to hit us up in the comments and let us know what you thought of the episode.
Yeah, we'll be back again next week for episode 3. See y'all then.
See you guys.